spooky crickets coming, aren't we? We're just going to be all scaring ourselves. We love doing that to ourselves, don't we? Just love to go to the horror flick and be a part of something that doesn't really affect us, and we think it doesn't. And then we go out in the real world thinking that's real, and like to scare ourselves. We like to be reactive instead of responsive. And I don't know what everyone thinks that's going to do for themselves. You're not going to be having anything you thought you were involving yourself with in your life when someone's out there working to take it away. It was in some of the chat of the UCY chat. I was saying the only thing I can see now is the only thing that can defeat these things in the world, the global governance stuff, and more particularly the methods that they use to take all your stuff right in front of you, is land disposal law of the United States of America. It is the most unique thing that's ever been done, if you will, of people doing for themselves. That I don't know why more people don't stand on that. Why don't they stand on the land they say they claim? They know mostly nothing about that. I've been coming for years to show all the stuff that's out there that's coming to defeat you there, because you're fighting and doing things you don't really need to be doing. It's certainly no thing that you can talk about amongst yourself that's going to solve the problem of the invasion going against you. Right in your face, transparent to us. Oh, we whine about the problem, but we won't really step up and do anything. And before I move on and forget, I think this is BTWRLM 237. For those of you on Pastcast, Prodcast, and Recast, over there on UCY, recast this broadcast on Thursdays. And I hear that Jules had to do more investment in more machines and get the heck out of Windows 10. But that's another story, isn't it? It's all how the technocrats work us down. And it becomes a very real problem. I don't know how many times I've focused people on their comments come up. It keeps coming about how everything's being integrated to divest you of your abilities. And then most of it's this digital world. We have, small silent weapons for quiet wars. I keep telling you about it. You just have to start understanding there's some realities. I guess we can all start playing music on the Titanic, I suppose, as the ship of state goes down. But I see a different thing. I'm hoping beyond hope, apparently, continually. At some point, you really, what about my sanity to continue beyond all measure, all other evidence that no one's really, the crickets like being crickets. They really, really do. In fact, a request last week, I said, why don't we show me something? Go to your YouTube and put the likes up if you're there. If you put a like, if you say a thumbs down, why don't you tell me why? Let's go and see, let's make a test between the Spreaker account and our YouTube or the Interactive. And thank you very much to the 10 people that went and did that. It's the same 10 people that do probably all the time. And I thank you for all that support. But there is no response. No response. Not even to go lift a mouse, push down a mouse click. And so the test sort of fails there too. Okay, so I'm pausing. Does that mean anything to anybody? Most likely not. And until it does start meaning something, until people stop making excuses to go simply lift a finger, they won't lift a finger for that. They're not going to lift a finger to protect themselves, and that's all of you all that haven't lifted a finger to do that. But will complain to high heaven and then deny heaven on top of it. I'm sitting here, I have all these other thoughts in my mind, and then I come to the broadcast, and all of a sudden it just goes into this other thought, like what is really going on with people? And just as I'll say it, I wasn't really going to talk too much. We had a mining district, Jefferson Mining District meeting this last week on Friday, and had a decent turnout. Some nice faces came back that we hadn't seen for years and years. And always good to see people still doing what they can, coming on in and being part of the answer, not just a solution. It's an answer to a war. In other words, it's still going to be up in the air, and there's still never going to be anything that stops that because of the nature of us in the world. Whatever excuses we might hear, all the so-called documentarians that want to tell you all about it, none of them actually know about it. And in fact, that's what I was talking to a little bit in the UCY chat right before the broadcast. You hear all these people that think they know what's going on, and they miss the major cores of it. They don't tell you how this thing gets worked out, how the methods are that go ahead and take you out. You'll hear that behind the woodshed, but I guess like any truth that you don't want to agree to, you don't like being behind the woodshed to be told that, because it means you might have to do something in the future about it. And so I guess I'm thinking about all the work that goes on amongst the people that are doing it, and then we make these gains, these slow gains over years that would be take just months if we all were understanding the problem, like sustainable development. The land laws of the United States can and will, for those of you that step up and do them, will defeat all of that almost immediately. The only thing left over would be how dastardly the criminal is that sits in the seat of decision that wants to fight you. And I guess I'm getting a whole lot more clear. Like guys, I've told you this over and over. You really don't know until you get involved. You don't know the travails of something. You don't know the high points and the low points. You don't know a thing until you get involved with a thing. The more I've been doing the projects that have come on me here in the last month or so, just very big issues, the clearer I am on what I tell you. Essentially, as I was mentioning in the chat from last night, the remedy I've been working with on is a petition for injunction. So I've talked to you a lot about these. It's where your non-money harms are remedied. And then we have the problem of the corruption of the courts, which everyone wants to, then what are you going to do with that? Well, this is the problem, and no one is smart enough to or intelligent enough to figure out they were duty-bound to have to not be the place where they are. They were supposed to know these things. So we have a massive education problem. And so that's the first thing it's like what I hear Ron Stiffens talking about, run for office just so you can have the platform to be the voice that educates people. You use it just for the conduit of what it does. And I've said that before. This is a truism. Find conduits to go to speak to people. One of my conduits is this one. Another might be writing some paper for a court case to help defend someone where they're useless to themselves. And I think I can't remember now. The last few weeks I'm kind of running like a blur, but I think I mentioned last week we sent in an equity petition for injunction, and the answer came back, yeah, you caught us doing the crime, so what? That's your government's here, folks. That's how brash it's become. And I know that if more people understood in the basics even of what I understand, across the country, United States of America, these things start to go away really, really quickly. But until you do, I guess you're going to have a lot of documentarians that are going to have a lot of fodder to talk to you about, so you can all know about how intelligent they look about a subject matter, and nothing ever gets stopped. Nothing ever stops. Nobody ever gets a knowledge in them that they need to show how sovereigns, the people being sovereign, what that really, really is. And in a way, I guess I said, being involved, I'm really fortunate to have stuck with this thing, and I'm seeing so absolutely clearly, and in these equity petitions, I'm able to just lay out so succinctly, at least I think so, anybody who reads them thinks so, exactly how the government is placed in a very limited capacity. All the codes everybody wants to poo-poo are saying the very same thing, and what you have is a bunch of rogue officials running outside the law and not being accountable and not being held to account. That I think that is pretty easily stopped when most everybody realizes, oh, that's how they're doing it. We need to stop that. And when we stop that, we go back to living in peace at least where we are. There's a bigger world. It has influences on us, and then we get to turn to those. But at least if we don't have to worry about the local usurpation of us. That's across the country. It's across the world, but across the country, United States, there's no excuse because of the land laws of the United States. And I'm here to tell you, and I want to tell you more, but I don't have any proof because the cases are running at this point, and we're up against a judiciary that is run by Bar Association members that I've told you have as their House Resolution union, professions union called the Bar Association. They have the policy written in from 1991, no less, continuing that they promote this thing called Sustainable Development, Agenda 21, as they can get it to be promoted, where appropriate. And when they get, and the only thing that means to you, as I've told you over and over again, is where they get away with it. But the laws don't even support what they're doing, and nobody knows sufficiently those local laws in order to stop anybody. And I just start wondering now why. What is this again? The self-inflicted wound. We want to be accessories to the crime against us. It's the horror show of our lives. We enjoy this. We love being scared. What better than to have a horror show we get to live in our own, be a character in our own horror show. Come on. Is that what we really want? Is that how we do this? Well, it is. It's what we're doing. But I mean, is that really what we're all about? I don't know. I guess you could say yes, but is it really the case? I'm not so sure that it is. If it is, then I guess I am wasting a lot of my breath in my life and 30 years or so, maybe more of my life, trying to figure out where America went. And what a surprise to me. I actually think I've figured it out pretty good. And nobody wants to hear it. Nobody within the constraint of the listeners that keep coming back, nobody else wants to hear it. We're the 0.0001%. And we're not even that because we got close. 2 weeks ago I think I noticed 322 on YouTube. So that means there was some other visitors over at BitChute, a few, and there was almost as many now, half as many at least on Minds.com. Thank you very much over there and all the support I'm getting with that. And the wires that you give me for boosting, I'm working on I'm trying to figure out a boost promotion, if you will. I'm still unfamiliar with all that, but thank you very much for the support to do that. It's coming on. I'm collecting quite a bit of points now to be able to do it, hopefully in a big enough way to be something. But that small group of people may make 0.0001% of the population. Of that, though, how many are actually working with the information? Shows you how little is actually maintaining even the level of destruction that you see, because it'll go faster without us. It goes even faster without the few. And so I don't understand what the hesitation is. I don't understand what the dialogue's all about. I mean, I looked at a chat last night, stream. You know, I can get into the chat. I can get into playing around and playing games and having fun, but to watch a stream go for over 2-3 hours, I don't even know what it was. I had other things to do. I'm doing other things. Watching it go on and on and on, just inane things, is really, in a way, it's just a big disappointment to me. I know the people that are in there are much better people than that. Well, maybe I should say I sure hope so. And yet it continues on and on and on, doing just nothing, and that's good enough. I guess it's at some level as well, because I think that was actually expressed. It's okay. We're here to do this, and you are there to do that. But I'm suggesting if you care at all, if you really believed in so-called liberty, you really understood what being free is, and it's a responsibility, but it can be a good one done correctly. We don't have time to be messing around. Now, and I hope most people appreciate what I've just said and agree with that, and may contemplate, okay, what can we do a little better? Now, that's all I'm asking every day. Just do a little bit better. Because we have as we're moving into Halloween, and the spooky crickets and all the things that we're going to is coming on us, and that I want to touch back another devil in the details here. It seems to be ongoing. It's all part and parcel ongoing to what I keep talking about. And I mean, I don't know what else. Part of me just doesn't understand how this is even getting past people to be, and not something that you continue to figure out to be able to explain to others above and beyond just knowing a thing. And this is all kind of tied to this whole really global governance technocratic thing that you won't hear this on the past cast relative to the broadcast before me, but Corbett's on the line now telling you all about what is sustainable development. He doesn't understand a whole lot, but I mean, he gets what he can pull together all the people that think they know. He can identify for you just as much as in a time what he found out was gobs and gobs and gobs of time of editing that he couldn't put together. There's so much information here. But after being told all that, I'll guarantee none of you that hear that, and none of you that have listened to me that haven't jumped in where I've asked you to, none of you will actually know what you're dealing with. You'll just see it happening to you. And yet the notices are all around that it's working against you right in your face. And I keep saying, in the United States, America, at least in the minimum, it may be the only place in the world, we can stop this cold in its tracks and show the example of the world how a land and its people can live in a greater peace. These things that are negative are only fueled by your interest in them, even when you talk out against them. Partly I don't like talking about too many things, unless I can find within that thing an object lesson that we can do a takeaway, if you will, get an idea. This is the core of the problem. We need to identify quickly and move from it, or how do we step aside it so it doesn't envelop us. So as we move into a spooky time of the year, which is just an interesting change, but there's lots of people working in the world, of the world. I want to return back quickly here to another devil in the details. Actually, someone who is a master from an organization, a master of deception and a master of subtlety. And if I was to put what I've been read myself, what seems to be at least a truism in a historic novel, if I can even put there, if you want to go there, in somebody's story, some fiction, or the telling of the truth, or the truth within the deception. I'm referring now maybe to things like the Bible. If I was to refer myself to an entity, a character that is a master of deception, and qualify the quality of that deception, qualify the subtlety that the deception has brought on us, this guy right here and this organization has to be right up at top. If it's not, it can't be the top, but it's going to be right. It'll be the left or right-hand man to the thing that is the most subtle, and it's this guy with a pope. So this week he comes out. Remember, the 31st is when the Jubilee, or the celebration with the treaty of the defeat of the Protestants comes together. The Lutherans. Remember, all this is coming. To us, it may mean nothing. I'm suggesting to you on the world stage it means something. I'm suggesting strongly to you that on the world stage it means something, because these are the people that are the army that's implementing all that that's wrong in the world today. Pope Francis states apparently this week, Christ, quote, made himself the devil. And I bring this up as an object lesson of subtlety, because this article is pretty interesting in going through and detailing out how this subtlety works. And I want to just get to the point, I guess. I don't want to tarry too long on some of these things. I've pointed out this Pope. I've pointed out subtleties that they bring. I've pointed out how they twist things within the church to make it look like something else, and it's not. How subtle is the deception with this organization. That for him to say this was an object lesson for us, that Christ made himself the devil. instead of what we're told actually happened, given it did. And I'm of the mind, I think I'd rather see this to happen because it gives us a way to translate through. That I'd rather look at that and follow that example than what this guy wants to offer. But he says, instead, on the cross, and they talk a lot about the cross, they won't explain the bent cross that the Pope will wear. They, again, these omissions to explain while they're saying other things are critical in observing the whole time. But this Pope came out to say that when Christ took all the sins upon himself and was crucified, he became the devil. Now, I just want to make a corollary so you see how subtle this is. Remember, this is the guy that's pushing Agenda 21, sustainable development, austerity, okay, global governments, one church, embracing all, the unity church. This is going to be the condition under which all of your behavior gets modeled eventually through the technocratic imposition. That let me offer you a subtle, I think it's important to read how the gentleman who authors this goes through, and just, he doesn't see it himself. He's explaining to you the subtlety. Let me offer you something. If you were to carry what you could from the back of a donkey, the burden that was carried by the donkey, if you could carry that load, by putting that burden upon yourself and carrying that load, and even dying under that load to carry it, would you have become the donkey? And such is the jackass that this Pope, in his conversion and subtlety and this forked tongue, is to the entire world, folks. And this is, I guess, my point. This guy will lie to you in such subtle ways that when he supports sustainable development or any of that stuff, global governance, and all these things he wants to make you warm and fuzzy about, and then he condemns your spirit by his interpretation, you are dealing with the devil himself, at least the left-hand or right-hand man. And I want you to focus when you're listening very carefully on the subtlety, because I'm focused a bit here on this, because it's the same subtlety we see throughout in different subject matter areas. They say, and let me give you an example. The county, any government has the right, has the power and the mandate upon the federal agency to coordinate. The agency devils come out and say, oh, we're going to allow you to cooperate. Coordination is not cooperation. Neither is it collaboration, partnerships, teamships, private-public partnerships, all this other stuff. It's not the same, but they come up with their deception. Public land is not public domain. They have public land and you're on public domain, and if you miss it, you miss the trick, you miss the subtlety, you miss your rights. It's throughout our existence. This language, this deception, the people in the world that are deceivers. And this guy comes up a week and a half or so, or 2 weeks before the big treaty sign-off, the big celebration of the unification of the church, on Halloween no less, to come out and say that I don't care what your belief about it is, or your belief in it, or your rejection of it. He says that the Christ made himself the devil. If you can't see, notwithstanding your belief or in disbelief of it, if you can't see that subtlety, you cannot use a critical mind to analyze the deception in that statement. I am pointing out for you a failure in you that anybody that knows about how to do this can use against you. And I want to call your attention to it, to your foible. Because if you keep making excuses about the truths that you hear and can't discern the lies, because they are so subtle, they have cut the hair so fine that it passes your perception, that is your weakness, then you will be preyed upon. And we're not talking P-R-A-Y here. And notice how close those two words are, and they're both vowels. In other words, there's not much distinction between them. Now, I was going to, again, I could read some of this. It's really fascinating. It is probably worth spending some time on. The example of the subtlety by which this guy, through this representation of this global church who wants to give control of everyone, is a deceiver, is so critical to understand. And then find out, you look around and you see it everywhere, that it probably should be more analyzed in the open. But I think I'm going to leave this to you all that are interested to go read. I'll have the link in the blogcaster. You can read it for yourself. I think the analysis is fair enough upon the point of the statements to show you that subtlety. Then you'll see, if you see this one, you'll see the other one between the Mary and Jesus and other things like that. You'll see how this can be then contorted, stretched out a little bit to assimilate the Muslim faith. Whatever you believe in, all that, so I don't care about I don't have any thought about what your particular belief or disbelief would be. I'm looking at how people with longer memories than us, longer institutional memories than us, are able to eventually, as we are witness today, control, or almost so, the whole and entire world, making it something of their making. And I happen to be here at a time, happen to have an insight given through my persistent research, looking at other people telling me what the world they found was for their purpose, getting a discernment on how to parse through those things and come to the time in the day of the world that I can tell you what I do, and I can see these things and the deceptions and have complete knowledge. Whether it ever happens in my time, probably won't, and it's not looking too good, that we have in our hands the ability to stop most all of this in its tracks and be the example to others so that they aren't brought into this sin, if I can put it that way, since we're talking on the Pope and they want to be so religiosity about it. We have the ability to continually be the example of the United States. If there's a blessing in the United States, it is the way this land disposal law shows the distinction in the world for the entirety of the time of the world as we know it or knew it. And who the players are that come to beat you down, steal it, and take away your peace on this earth, underneath the color of bringing peace on earth. Anyway, I was pretty impressed, again, to just see someone else writing about the subtle deception. And the finer the subtlety, I tell you, the higher the quality of the deceiver, the higher it goes up in this thing that we're actually fighting. And it preys upon our fallen nature. It preys upon our desire to do other things than what we ought to do. And I think I'll end there. I really think this is something you need to read. You need to see this and start to apply it. If you haven't seen how this subtlety works everywhere, again, this is the kind of thing. If you get the method of the deception, you get the eyes to see, and then you get to now see those parts that were transparent right before you got that awareness. And the only way you're going to do that is to spend the time not bickering and fighting amongst each other or doing other things, but focusing on these things. At one level, the things I do, I just wonder where my life has gone and what for. On the other hand, I'm really astonished at what I'm seeing. And I don't know what that's going to be to me in my last day. But so I don't know what to put more value than that. But up until now, we are a tortured people, and we allow it to be so. There's no reason for me to doubt why we're in the fix we are, notwithstanding in our hands is the answer for at least those problems which bring us into war amongst ourselves, despite every rule or law properly placed that would protect against it. Despite the law that came to save us, given you do believe in that, because we are not capable. We're just human garbage at some point. And we prove it every day, and we look around and we accept it every day as well. How, given that's the point, who are we to fall short of it? And wouldn't that be just an easy out to say, yeah, let this guy guide me by the nose and into the depths of the stinking abyss? This is how they do everything everywhere. This guy is one of the premier deceivers. Anyway, enough there. We are susceptible to deceivers. A sucker born every minute. It's all been talked about. This is the premier guy. He brought. This is coming on the world. It's coming the fruition of everything that's been planned for years, hundreds of years. I can't conceive it, folks, but I see it. At some point, you can't deny it. At some point, we're told there's only a few anyway that stand up against it. And I'm looking and saying, well, we can stand up against it without so much jeopardy that we may have seen in the past. And in fact, this land disposal law eliminates most all jeopardy except for the most heinous criminal in a seated decision, which by that point, most everybody ought to see and want ended. I guess is the point. Last few weeks, I'm having miners coming to me. The agencies are stepping up their crimes are horrendous what they're doing now. I had to, as I was talking at the mining district meeting, I've had to kind of pull out of another trick I've developed. I will use it every once in a while, but this time I had to make a communication that was solely this trick, and it was essentially I don't know how I can explain it more than just to say it's exposing the fraud by omission that is being stated as a fraud. In other words, they'll bring out a rule or law they say you were supposed to follow or you were subject to, and then you show how they didn't even follow it themselves if you applied it. It's a combination of that and the fraud by omission and the even if. Even if I gave you all the power you claim and demand, you yourself fell short. I guess is a better way to suggest that. And we're finding, again, it's easy to do once you see. You get to the point where you show them, no matter how we do this, I give you all the power in the world and you're still a criminal. Is how bad it is because it's easy to identify, and there's not many people that can come up against that at this point. Does that mean that the one that's being beat down by that type of a criminality stops? Absolutely not. Then they're not. And as I've suggested and they are doing, what you have to do at that point is become that expert witness of your own. You don't blink. You become the expert, the witness to the crime against you, and you document everything. And you're working for the day that you have remedy. Because in the United States of America, remember, they won't let you to protect yourself before you haven't been, you can't protect yourself from a car that hasn't hit you yet. And that's one of the little conundrums that go on, and why I've been focused on some of the land laws that I see, because there's a presumption against their action against you, which is how you were supposed to be protected, the interference of which is a breach in the first instance. And so you start to understand better how to communicate what we were never to have lost in memory, never to have lost in how we respond, and never to have allowed and continue to allow against us. So part of this global order and this technocracy is getting into the silent weapons of quiet war, is getting you into the technocratic world, the Internet of Things, as they tell us. Our adoption of all that. I've been talking about the sustainable debt that they're going to put you under. Remember, your fiat currency is a debt instrument. It says note right on the United States money. United States currency. You see how easy it is to use their bad words? So they use that note. It's an evidence of debt. You can never have money. You can never have wealth in that system, but you will continue to have to use it, or because you won't really settle down and actually start working on things of alternatives. And when you do make the alternatives, you go to things like Bitcoin. It has no value whatsoever. Actually, you're watching the promise in people's minds and hopes filled out in an electron-based system. So I've been talking about watch out this Bitcoin, watch out for the Ethereum, and I've been pronouncing it wrong, I think. I was saying Ethereum. It's Ethereum, I believe. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what name it comes by. As I pointed out last week, it's the protocol they're using. Everybody thinks it's separate. Everybody thinks it's not traceable or whatever. They're still pounding that thing, and right now maybe it is. But they're getting you to agree to another fiat thing. Has no value. It's still going to be in that debt system. And you're going to have to engage with the Internet of Things, which is the very system they want you plugged into to control yourself. So all you people that think you're liberty-minded, you have a critical thought, you're an anarchist, you are standing for the Constitution, any of all that stuff, they've got you hooked already. As I said, I think the technology is a fantastic idea, but you're not in control of it. And so there's another principle coming on this. At this point, I just want to touch on the fact that as I almost didn't come in time to tell you, the promotion is on. I found another promotion. It was off of a website that actually told you it was sponsored. This article was sponsored, but I found fascination in them, in their promotion, explaining to you how integrated this thing already is in the world, this Bitcoin thing, this protocol, the Ethereum, who's been involved behind the scenes in it. It was a promotion called The Safest Way to Bet on the Bitcoin. They're already telling you it's a wager. Well, do you have wages, folks? So this is income already. They're telling you this is a big speculation anyway, but we're going to sell it to you. The safest way to bet on the Bitcoin. This is all speculation. They know it. When you read this story, you're going to find out who the players are that are behind the scenes that are literally global in their reach and what they're trying to do with this. And it integrates Bitcoin and Ethereum. These people have been involved the entire time. And now they're promoting it to you. Now remember the dichotomy between already the China has shown that they're going to close it out, and I told you watch the distinction. They caused the division in the world, and the Western area is going to say, oh, we embrace it. And I said, but they're going to do something that, a trick I learned when I read The Mystery of Capital by Hernando de Soto, and I don't remember all these years and decades ago I read this, that he referenced where he got it. He was a Geneva-trained economist out of Peru. He wrote a book. I just found out, I told you on a prior broadcast, he's still involved with all this stuff. He may bet his mark by saying, oh, people that don't have property rights have a problem. Well, then you start finding out he's also involved in tokening blockchaining these properties within the county courts. I told you he explained to me how they were the target was going to be your titles in the United States, and then I saw the 2008 destruction of your title system, the MERS system, and then he pops up again a few years later. Now we're going to blockchain it all. I've talked to you all about this. So this blockchaining thing is not unknown to be a tool in the very near future, it seems. They're now promoting this to you as a bet, an investment. On the other hand, all the axis of evil folks from the West are actually starting to come to do something that I learned from Hernando de Soto in that book, what a power does. It's almost Machiavellian, if I actually just triggered on that. I think it's actually a principle in back to the Machiavellian, The Prince, that you can't let a wound of dissension rise up to become a force. Any dissension can, and if it organizes up, it will take you down as the power. And so there's there's an international knowledge called embracing the, call it embracing the outlaw. And I've talked to you about this a little before. This is what you're watching and everywhere else in the Western world as the West starts to promote you into the use of the blockchain tech protocol. The other countries that are so-called the axis of evil, because that's the big game, are actually already showing you how it's going to start to work in the future. Here's already in the news of while they're promoting the blockchain and Bitcoin and how to bet on it and who the players are on a global level already on both of them. The news pops out that Putin green lights the launch of the CryptoRuble. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered the issue of national cryptocurrency, according to the communications minister Nikolai Nikiforov, after a closed-door meeting. The minister said that once the digital currency or CryptoRuble is issued, other cryptocurrency mining will be banned and it will be entirely regulated by the government. I just told you that, a month ago. So this is how this works, is where it's going. So what have they done here? They've seen, as you heard, the IMF, the Lagarde saying, this can't be a threat, but we're moving there. So they not only did what Hernando de Soto said, but they're actually becoming that system. And this is part of the theory that Hernando de Soto broaches to us about the mystery of capital and the power that can be taken down by a minority festering wound that doesn't like what you're doing. It's what you anarchists are really supposed to be doing, not just talking a term and making up your own reality about it. You're supposed to be actually doing something. Russia's anticipating for us what's going to happen. China's already outlawed it. What they do, what Hernando de Soto says is the idea of embracing the outlaw, that which can become a problem to the power. You embrace that by what? I've talked to you about this before. You embrace it by inducing it into the system for protection, and so you can regulate and therefore control it. This is partly how they did the mining problem, the miners' problem as well. The problem was about the land. It's a very special commodity, as we have heard, notwithstanding my dislike of the word commodity in that sentence, or in that concept, but that they also had, the miners had made, as outlaws, had made their own governments, which actually explained the condition that was needed and adopted by the Congress of the United States. But in the fact of the mining law, they had to embrace a problem that could have caused a major problem in the power. And by bringing it in and regulating it, they then controlled it and brought it more in. Well, it stopped the problem, is what you just saw Russia now doing. They see a problem with, and they'll show you, they'll explain to you that it's more problematic where money laundering is concerned, and a couple of other things they'll name to you, just like the war of terror is used as a tool, an excuse. We're here to help you. They'll name those things to give them credibility and justification. In fact, what they're doing is they don't want this thing to blow up, and if they jump in now, they can now control it to the extent that they'll exclude everything else than what they've now created, is what they're going to do everywhere, eventually. Putin's Russia will regulate Bitcoin with control over supply and mining. Now, I see lots of people on the internet laughing about, control this, and they can't control that. That's why it's going up in price and that. To me, that's all a promotion. It's all, again, you're betting on it going up. They're promoting it so that you do that. When it comes down, you will become made an outlaw and an enemy of the state in real, and all the surveillance that you know about will be used eventually to track you down. You'll have been plugged in or have to plug in, and there's really not going to be much of a way to get at you. They don't have to stop you, how you trade. They just got to find out that you're trading. And then they take away all your toys and put you in a small cage. It's pretty simple. So they're embracing the outlaw. At this point, Putin's already on it. And they're going to then control it. And the whole entire Internet of Things will become one big firewall against it. And there will be lots of actions that you may start hearing, people just being sucked up for just even dealing in it when it wasn't regulated. And we'll just tie that over to your gun rights. Regulate your guns that way. That's what they're doing there when they regulate them. They're causing you to be an outlaw. They're going to embrace you under the new regulations. That means your rights that you had are now no good, and they'll come in and they'll now know where to go after you when you just miss the ding in your gutter. The code enforcement will be on your doorstep. So Putin's Russia will regulate Bitcoin. Everyone says, "Oh, it can't be done." You watch. Well, keep thinking that way. But the point here is they're moving into their own. I told you, even if they don't call it Bitcoin, they will regulate a one that they create, the blockchain that they create. And the national problem with this is, as I told you before, is all your properties become able to come underneath contracts through Ethereum and then valued in the virtual currency, which will be many currencies possibly with their own ratios. The technocrat and the bean counter and the technocrat join. What a nightmare. But that's what they're willing to do because it keeps you out of your properties. And this is what part of the problem is and what you'll have to understand to fight against. Partly why I suggest understanding what that patent document that gave up, conveyed the property out of public holding into private holding in the United States is perpetual. Forever is a long time. They can only get you from that if you start engaging in their creations. I hope you, I said this is the dynamic coming, and Russia's on this. They're embracing the outlaw. They're going to create their own currency. They're going to regulate Bitcoin and its mining, and they're going to control it out. Along the lines of all these multiple current digital currencies, which will be like national. Remember, they all end up going back to one thing that will be in the baskets of currencies that are considered the total value of which is the value they work on. The percentage becomes the ratio. As you see the SDR thing that we've talked about here behind the woodshed. Just to give you, how many years ago was that? This is all still going on. It's going to go on. There was an article, and I'm not so sure I agree with the application of the theory of where the source of this idea came from, but this article called Bitcoin, A Tower of Monetary Babel, delineates this problem, analyzing essentially and ultimately what I've told you, and I was more looking at what the analysis was, but he ends up coming to the same thing I've said. This is really not a good thing. This is no different than fiat that's no good. It can't be, although it's the next iteration of the system to global fiat, to normalize everything. Remember that deception of normalization. You normalize people to the new normal. It could be a felony against you, as I've told you, explain all that too as well. The method behind the what we call the Sustainable Development Agenda 21, all these little protocols, all these programs of action, all these little things that come together to make this big thing. The Tower of Monetary Babel. My problem with that title, and it's just my problem. Maybe you have a better insight. Maybe you're a little more aware of how this would work. The Tower of Babel, to me, was destroyed to cause the many, because it started from a one that became a problem. It was self-egoistic, and it was attempting to be bigger than itself, and so it was destroyed for a many that couldn't communicate. That's where we are now. What they're going to do is they're going to make a Tower of Babel, but his argument was that right now the various ratioed currencies are a problem. And so I seem to believe this is an inversion of what he actually meant. Notwithstanding that, I think it's important to understand that, because if you want to go here, you go to the Pope and you want to talk about the Catholic, you want to talk about the subtle deceptions and all that, it becomes interesting and important to figure out how someone's communicating. And did they really mean that? And that's why my problem with about this is, because what they're starting at is with a bunch of disparate voices, if you will, and they're going to shove them all together and make another they will make the monetary Tower of Babel. But he's speaking to the Babel as being already the many and various coins. So he started backwards. At any rate, I thought this you'll see this on the blogcaster. You want to see a basic analysis of his interpretation. I thought it was fair enough on that part, notwithstanding my lack of understanding on the use of the title. It makes a point that I think is valid, and I think if it's not me you'll listen to, maybe you'll read someone else who has some things. And now, with respect to the Putin became new in the news in a big important way this week. Again, I think this Bitcoin is that thing that's riding under that's happening. It's like the Catholic, the Protestant treaty with the Lutheran Church that's going to happen in a couple of weeks. I think there's a lot of noise covering some much more important things going on. But something popped up in the news this week. I just want to touch it, only because I actually thought this was old news, and I guess this is where my disconnect with the real world is. We deal with stuff for our purposes because of the subject matter that I do here behind the Woodshed during the week in the land disposal law, mining law, things like coordination, working with governments on the people in governments to do better for ourselves and themselves, all this kind of thing. This is kind of prevalent to us, so we're in this subject matter area. We're on the front lines of it. We are sensitive to prejudices within the system when the government starts to give special treatment to certain things, especially when they're foreign. Now, so I thought this next story was actually old news, and no one was going to see it much. But this week, and you'll probably have heard about it, I just want to touch it to show you, be careful, again, what our perception is and what our perception is guided to be needs to really be checked so that we don't get lost in some of the things that are going on, because to me, there's a bigger thing going on that even this big story covers. Emails reveal Bill Clinton met with Vladimir Putin just before Uranium 1 deal. Now, Uranium 1 has become a big deal. The problem with it is I'm noticing some problems with the storytelling, and from all the same players about the storytellers. Now, so let me maybe preface this next point. We had understood about, I'm talking my colleagues and I, we had understood about Uranium 1 back around 2010. We heard of it because there was a foreign Canadian company that was getting preferential treatment in the Oregon legislature for doing projects out over in eastern Oregon. And the analysis I came to was that, and it was dealing in uranium, and that what has happened is there was a theft of the mineral estate from the people of the United States of America, those that would find a valuable mineral deposit, by saying, and after 1872, that uranium was an energy mineral and not involved and not able to be claimed as a valuable mineral. That was a trust breach. Now, I'm saying that is our opinion, our idea, because we don't have the time, energy, people, or place to go discuss that breach. Not yet, anyway. This is why we're looking to get enforced a mineral trustee in the government, whom we would address this with, and whom the government eliminated. Right? So you see the method of the destruction inside the system by people in the system. But we were understanding this problem that a Canadian company was getting special mining privileges that no other miner could get, or no other miner could actually work at all while these special privileges were happening. And that we saw it on the federal side too, special things going on. We took notice of this thing in 2010, and we also understood at that time, before it was Uranium 1, it was called Oregon 1. And I find it interesting, you don't see much tangible discussion on where this Uranium 1 company in Canada was actually doing their business. Well, there happens to be a uranium belt of various values stretching all the way from Malheur, Oregon, all the way down into running about northwest, a band of uranium that runs all the way down into Nevada, maybe even all the way down into the Clive Bundy area. And remember the Hammonds, and remember the Bundy sons going up to Malheur. This is all almost like a magnet for people of injustice for people to go to. You can almost see how this all works. 2010, we were talking about this thing called Oregon 1. We found out it was a Canadian company then. Then we heard that the interest was partially bought by Russia, and that's when we said, how are they able to do that and still do business in this country, where the mining law says that the foreigners really can't get the mineral? Was our first clue back then. So, we made the comments, we sent the letters, we discussed the problem, and it falls on deaf ears because we're still coming to terms with the fact that most everyone inside the system, everyone in government is on the take. And I say that with your representatives, they're on the take. And this little Uranium 1 program shows a problem for greater areas. And I talked about this behind Woodshed a while back. Talked about these conservation areas. They throw everything into the public lands into a conservation area. And then we're finding out through another gentleman's work who will not contact us, so I have problems with someone who will not contact us to help fortify the information or to actually qualify every point of the information as true. His independent work started to show this as well, that there's something going on behind the scenes, way bigger than Uranium 1. And it's across the country. It's how these offices of profits that these congressmen and senators are actually become offices of profit. How do they go in with maybe a few million and come out with many million when they were supposed to be serving the public trust? Well, they're plundering it. And so my concern on all this is there's a lot of players that are pointing this Uranium 1 out that we knew in 2010. No one had a point to make about it. And all of a sudden now it pops up in the scene, and I'm not saying that none of it is not there. What I'm saying is that all of it is not there. Some of it is. But be careful, and my point here, don't let this discern the subtleties, and don't let this one have you think that when they caught this one, all the others went away. There's internal investment on any land they put in conservation and won't be used. That means the value stays. That's why they inventory this land, and then once they put it into conservation, that value is perpetual, protected by the United States government, which can go into hedge funds, which, if you know where they are, wink and a nod, congressmen and senators can invest in. All right, so this is part of the deal. So this is what we were seeing back in 2010. So Uranium 1 to me is like an anomaly at some point where we heard the rest of the world comes from our awareness 7 years later. But they do come 7 years later. So this is our delay point. A lot of knowledge happens, and it takes a mass of people all of a sudden now to get all over it. But my concern is they're going to get all over the wrong things, and they're going to be guided by people, the players, to be looking at the wrong stuff and foment a lot of things that are kind of useless to them. So getting back to these emails, reminded me about, I thought WikiLeaks almost kind of starts this again back in May. Sure enough, I ran across a Twitter that came out. You'll get a link. WikiLeaks cable Robert Mueller delivering highly enriched stolen uranium to Russia in 2009. Now the plot thickens. Everyone thinks the plot is thickening. He's the guy that's investigating Trump, so all the Trumpsters come out. Oh, there's an attack. It's an inside job. All this stuff against Trump. And this guy he was involved with the Uranium 1 and all this other. Well, you got to look really carefully what WikiLeaks does. You got to go get this link, and you go look what else was there available to read. Appears to me, WikiLeaks misinformed everybody. Yes, it shows that there was this little thing that you say out of context that could say that Mueller was involved in moving a sample of uranium to a place. When you go find the rest of the documents that WikiLeaks also has, it says that Mueller was doing that almost as 2 points. A sting operation against a theft of uranium and as a sample to Russia to find out how to track some uranium that was stolen from them by Georgia. And then you start seeing, well, this Mueller thing is maybe that's just a false story. That's a false lead. And that just called my attention. Oh, maybe that's what's going on. And why I think this story, there's some truth to it. There's some things that go on. There's investments that were made. There was a Canadian company. See, our problem is the Canadian company at all had any dealings in a valuable mineral deposit that Americans should have been involved in. Not the companies, the men and women of the country. That's what we look at. That's what the law is supposed to speak to. It was for our benefit within the states. Or all you want to do states' rights and who's government, who's supposed to manage the public lands. It's supposed to be managed a certain way, and those states are supposed to protect that in you. That's the law. And so, this WikiLeaks thing, again, the players that deceive us, we have proof, I think, now. That's exactly what they did back in May. And why did they start to trigger that? Look how long that few months that took to start rolling up. So WikiLeaks gives you part of the story. You think Mueller's involved. It anticipates this thing with Trump, doesn't it? So who are these players, I say? But watch out of the deceptive information that's coming out of every one of these. Be careful of the tracks, all the rabbit holes you want to follow. Maybe we'll back off a little bit and say, yeah, there's a lot of corruption in the government. There's lots of ways you're watching how they steal things. They make these nested corporations, and they give people money by making corporations that provide political contributions. Watch, look, take notes on how these people do this to you. Now, what do? Well, maybe you can start working on how to stop that, for one, and understand how much the Supreme Court has been involved. The bar members have been involved to allow all this. To me, the players are the players, but they're all players. And are you going to be played, or are you going to learn to see, wait, we're going to stop the Ferris wheel right here. And everyone's getting off. Even you at the top. Jump. That's when we step in. It's about time, folks. We're getting everything lined out for us. It goes on, this little saga goes on. More people to focus on. AG Sessions could lift gag order on informant in Clinton Russian uranium probe. And then they talk about this informant. Well, if you look closely at that story, that's going to lead you probably to a dead end also, because where Mueller was actually running an FBI sting and proof sample to Russia to catch someone else, a third party, that what he knew as an informant means nothing. If it involves exposing that a foreign corporation was doing a political contribution and they can show that the lawyers can show how that was lawful, it means nothing. If you watch how they do this, these political usurpers, they do it by the books, unless they got stupid. And that happens. And what I'm watching is an overview, without getting really deep into it. The answers that they have are right-on answers that would be a protection. They did it pretty good. Whether they did it absolutely right, I don't know. Whether or not circumstantially you can understand that Bill Clinton just ain't worth $500,000, even, double his speaking. He's not even worth $250,000, and you get that kind of money, that's a scam. You see another avenue for the scam. I talked behind the woodshed for years, and I don't receive anything directly from any source for that. I do receive donations from people that appreciate what I do in lots of other areas but for what I say here directly, you don't see a PayPal thing. You don't see, donate here. I'm not on Patreon. Listen, you got to hook up to all that system, don't you? I'm precluded from that entire system. That's how difficult it is. I'm not even smart enough to say, hey, want to do that for me? No, isn't that partially a lie too? So, there's a big disconnect between all this. All the time I've paid, I ain't got a dime for talking. To go somewhere to talk. And this guy can go to some place and get $500K just to show up and shake hands and sound like Gary L. on the road less traveled 2 hours after this broadcast at reallibertymedia.com. Sound just like him. That's what you pay that kind of money for? Gary, you're not getting enough money. I think he gets the same I do. And so there's a big scams going on right in your face. They're telling you how they do it. Take notes. Start figuring out, for those of you that are interested, instead of squabbling between yourselves, start looking at how to do something more more productive. They see, oh, we've got this informant that was never left to speak, and then you find out what they're going to speak about was only going to point to all the stuff. They're going to point to you back and say, well, we did this right, and this did this right, and you're going to say, yeah, but that looks pretty shaky. And they say, yeah, but it was legal. I guess I'm pausing here. Do you see how they play the game? I mean, it's pretty fascinating how they play everybody. And the players are all there still. I'm just blown away at how consistent the same players, the news sources that we all have, are all the same people doing the same nonsense and play the same scam, and everyone keeps running down those trails and makes a big deal about it instead of stepping back and say, wait a minute, that's a scam. What's the cover? What's the cover? And I'm suggesting to you, Uranium 1 is there. Uranium 1 was done a certain way. Whether or not the nuts and bolts prove it out to be actually unlawful, I don't know yet. It sounds like the words they're using and the basic authorities I know, they kind of did it pretty good there. It may look dirty, and it might be dirty that way, boy, it looks. But legally, it's been done correctly. And so you can search out all that all you want and waste all your time there, or you can say, wait a minute, that's now being covered for all the other atrocities that are going on across your land, United States of America. This is partly why I wonder about the Bundys a little bit, why they're not taking wise counsel. Are they a part, or are they just dupes? And then they play their part. I don't know. I don't make really the judgments. I'm saying there's a problem. There's many problems. From where we stand, and my colleagues and I looking at the law, and what was supposed to go on, the entire thing's a big crime against everyone. And there's a few inside that know how to play that game. They know how to run that arm on the bandit. They're betting that you don't pay attention. You want to bet on Bitcoin? You want to bet on how you can track down their criminality against you. Oh, well, they're not going to come. They don't affect me. Yeah, well, you don't know that they're not. Bundys didn't know that they were being affected by one Harry Reid bringing in a solar project. You think it's all about uranium? Stop your myopic views, everyone. Stop. It's all over. Every aspect of your life has got somebody getting their hands in it for some gain that they're getting. Whether that's ideological or literally getting paid, or whether or not some contribution to some political whatever, charity, or even the charities on top of that. Watch how it all plays. This is all how they do it. And you should actually be jealous that you didn't figure it out sooner. And then one and a half of me wants to tell you, and so I will, you should have been doing it. Why ain't you if you're so dang smart? That's what I ask myself. See, I saw this a long time ago. I saw how you do this. I may not have seen it completely and nice and clean like I've noticed that it can be done a little better, but I saw enough. I figured that part out. I chose not to go there. I don't know why, but it just didn't seem like something I wanted to do. But we all really, at some level, at one level, in this legalized system, you better have done that in order to protect yourself. That's how this place has been set up now. The only the exception is, I think, land disposal law, where you can carve out your holding as against the whole entire world, as the law requires, though criminals in government won't recognize, but that there is, at least in the remedy of law, the tools. And again, back to the same old harping point, lots more of people that wouldn't take this nonsense locally, knew how to run, let's say, their remedies through, and the courts become swamped with having to answer, having threatened for how frail their answer is against these substantial rights, I think starts to take its toll quickly. Very quickly. And getting over to these emails, that WikiLeaks, that's where people are getting information and sending it over. We also know hacking happens. We know the Russian Putin thing with Bitcoin. They're looking, they also know the hacking, they also know the NSA, and they know all the tools that got dumped on the market. They know that there's all this vulnerability going on, and they're moving forward anyway. But that caused a question for me when all these stories started popping up. Who's doing the hacking? And so I find it very fascinating, and this is a report I couldn't get to here weeks and weeks ago, how many tabs I usually have. Was a little story that I thought was very, very cool about the time they're also, again, remember, Putin did it. This is also the time that Putin, I don't know how much Putin did it with buying an interest in a Canadian company. What does that hurt America? See, that's the whole thing. You got to be careful on how you track this. Did Putin have that, or was that Russia itself as a country? Was he involved with the business? I haven't even looked that deep. My point is, look very carefully on whether or not all that was illegal or not, actually. It wasn't in the United States. It was a company in Canada doing business with the United States that was getting apparently, well, you can't prove it. There weren't favors, but because there was some kind of a favorable activity done in favor of a foreign corporation, kickbacks got made, if you will, donations were done to political campaigns. Well, that's pretty nice. And so Russia's smart enough to look at a Canadian company. This happens all the time in mining, folks. I don't understand why this is a big deal either. Russia finds interest. You think that China's not already in the United States? They have almost all the strategic minerals tied up in this country, and we're looking at Russia from Canada? Are you kidding me, folks? Are you missing the big picture? Yes. So, was all that illegal with even Putin actually buying an interest in a Canadian company? I don't think so. And so, we see that problem is because these corporations aren't supposed to have an interest in these minerals. They're supposed to go to the people of the United States. Where is all this information coming to expose these things on time? Something 2010, all of a sudden 2017, oh, this is a big issue. I thought it was water under the bridge. They forgot about it. No, this is coming out at a time to do something. And so my thought is, in my little paranoid way, oh, they're covering something here. Well, I think they are. I think we can start seeing more and more and more and more. How do they get this information? What do you have to be concerned about? What is this technocratic thing where they move Bitcoin, they control all the resources, the value, the actual wealth, and then hand you an electron? What is the vulnerabilities to this whole system? Where is it going? Why did Russia go to an electron when they're actually buying gold and fortifying gold and making contracts of gold production to China? We're missing all of this? Why does China have holdings in the United States to almost 90% of the I think the rare earth minerals and some most strategic minerals are now controlled by the Chinese. And I know of miners who have vast discoveries of rare earths, and they can't get a dime in order to develop them. They're the last 10%. If you don't think there's a major thing going on under the skin that Uranium-1, I think, is covering over. Let's get on. Who's doing the hacking? Well, here's another insight. Here's a little deception. The way I read, you can read different, I suppose, how Israel caught Russian hackers scouring the world for U.S. secrets. How Israel caught Russian hackers scouring the world for U.S. secrets. Putin did it, folks. Always, Putin did it. Now, Putin did this up in Canada. Folks, if he had the lawful right to buy interest in a corporation, is it a real problem? Not within the law, no. The big problem they want to focus you on is, it's nuclear power. It's whatever high concentrated this and that. Well, concentration is smelting. It's processing. It's not the mine. You got to start separating out all these interests. What was going on really has to be looked at if you're interested, but I think it's a dead-end trail at some point when you start realizing this is going on in all kinds of places, and who's one of the feeders of the information to start the nonsense that you start going and running around on? Israel said they caught the hackers. And who was recently up in the news about, and I thought about this myself, just a Russian virus company, an antivirus company, that's pretty suspicious, knowing that antivirus programs are pretty easy you could throw anything in you want and be protected, couldn't you? How long has I been thinking about that with XP? I didn't trust this company just for that. Not just that, because maybe they are connected to the government. I don't know. They deny it, but I don't know. So I'd just as soon just back off and not have anything happen, right? Like, turn off your updates, no problems, if you will. And then they give you a computer program, OS, Windows 10. You can't turn it off necessarily. In fact, I was talking, Jules in UCY was saying somebody suggested blocking the port that it has to go out on or in on. And that'll work, and at the router, that'll work until they decide that's what you're doing, because they can't find the signal, and then they have the program update to offer a port search on an open port. Then you're going to have an active firewall. I mean, that's the technology. But right now, you get out. They just get out. They get in and out as they want. So they took that away from you. You can't not update them, apparently. So this is the war as it folds out, adapt. So Kaspersky Labs was pinpointed, a global company, global antivirus, that was pinpointed to be the tool for Russia's government to get into all these computers and the government and all that. So much so that the government lots of governments forbade their product. Like most security software, Kaspersky's Labs products require access to everything stored on a computer in order to scour it from viruses or other dangers. Its popular antivirus software scans for signatures of malicious software or malware, then removes or neuters it before sending a report back to Kaspersky. Now, that's not the whole deal here. What happens? How'd they find that out? They say that Israel found out. How did Israel find this out? Folks, it says in the story, Israel hacked Kaspersky's servers. Israel hacked Kaspersky's servers. Do I have to say it again? Who is doing the hacking? And I think that's really relevant compared to the global condition and who the players are. They keep talking about Kaspersky. They keep talking about the Russian government. They said, how did they find out? Israel did the hacking. They didn't say that they could find that Kaspersky ever did any hacking, actually. Only that it could happen. And so the subtlety here is maybe not so obvious. It seems obvious once you read the story and understand. But when you see the headline and the finger pointing, you got to go look and see, well, what was the method that they detected them? To do that, Israel had to hack. Israel is the hacker. Kaspersky's researchers noted that attackers had managed to burrow deep into the company's computers and evade detection for months. These people are capable. You think they're NSA level or better? You think? Investigators later discovered that Israel hackers had implanted multiple backdoors into Kaspersky's systems, employing sophisticated tools to steal passwords, take screenshots, vacuum up emails and documents, etc., and so forth. And we're supposed to believe that Kaspersky did it? Israeli intelligence officers informed the NSA that in the course of their Kaspersky hack, they uncovered evidence that Russian government hackers were using Kaspersky's access to aggressively scan for American governmental classified programs and pulling any findings back to Russian intelligence systems. They provided their NSA counterparts, the same ones with all the tools they threw in the world to cover their tracks. Remember, you don't know who's doing the hacking now. The NSA counterparts with solid evidence of the Kremlin campaign in the form of screenshots and other documentation, according to the people briefed on the events. According to the people briefed on the events. This story, that line right there, I had to ask, and I put this on Twitter because I just wanted to find out, was this written by Sorcha for all? According to the people briefed on the events. That's the signature of that so-called author. So how much of this do we agree with? How much is all that part of playing the game? But we can see, at least here, and would correlate before, that Israel is the hacker. NSA is the hacker. They have the tools to do it. They can fabricate whatever information they want. Am I saying that Kaspersky is exonerated? Absolutely not. Spy versus spy. What I'm saying is that don't miss the obvious. Israel hacks. Remember, they have all those things that they've developed that were more serious. The problem with the Iranian centrifuges, Stuxnet or something like that, and the other one that was even worse, it was Israeli generated with the NSA counterparts. So, Stuxnet, that's what it was. A joint, I just rolled up and saw it, and not a joint American-Israeli operation like Stuxnet. So, these people have been in the news like this for decades, doing this stuff. Now they've blamed Kaspersky. They come up with the evidence to criminalize you. And I want you to notice about what I've been warning you about. When these people get a hold of you, if that happens in the future, they can make up anything they want. Does that mean, be fearful and don't do something? Well, no. But this is the world you live in. You can't really know what's up. Why I say learn to discern. Learn how that you can be deceived so you can protect yourself as high a level as possible. My thought on this, just by looking, is that it's the truth that Israel hacked. Kaspersky may have been the victim here. This is a lab that you would think would have been looking very carefully, and even they were surprised after 4 months to find that they had to wait that long before they could find they were a victim. That's how adept this attack is. So, before we start looking at what we're being told, let's look inside what we're being told to see what there might be a different report altogether to glean from the information. These are very dangerous, dangerous people. And you have to be very, very careful not to allow yourself to be lulled in by any of it. And to my mind, because of what we do, we see things in a certain way. The way we've had to learn to approach a lot of these things, not on a digital level necessarily, but from a interaction level with people, with the deception of what the law is by policy versus what it is in law, how to analyze the differences, how to use those differences as the power for someone who needs it. That's how you would step in as well. They come in with an authority. You show that it's short of what it was supposed to be. That requires that you show that you're in a place, that you are in a place, and that place is not touchable. This is getting back to land law, getting back to the evidence of what people have and what the government can't have. This gets us up into fire policy. This is a very important thing. In the West burning up, it's given us opportunity to get in and provide the answers to people that are want it but are overwhelmed and don't have the knowledge. We can, myself, and then by extension, once I see some things and hand them off, me and my colleagues are able to inform people really quickly on what the actual thing is. Not by opinion, just by finding the documentation and having the idea, the insight to make a quick analysis that's on point. All of it, all this stuff that we see is really, that looks like an oppression. Handing the arsonist the decision to fight the fire, which they tell you right off the bat, they're only going to manage, not fight, but manage it, should tell you something. And we can defeat all that if we just have a common knowledge, a memory of what law is and what our power is right in front of us. Instead, what we do is we take the words of people like Israel who say Kaspersky did it while they're the ones that did all the hacking. The United States, the NSA says, oh, we got a terror thing coming up, or the CIA who says, we have a terror thing coming up, and then you find out that they're the one that set it up to trick the guy that was too stupid to figure it out, to make it look like something was going on. You're told a bunch of nonsense. The guy that comes with this phony this white robe comes to you and says that the devil, Christ became the devil. And when you look inside the words, wait a minute, that's not what happened. Again, when I took on the burden of being a donkey, did I become a donkey? Well, maybe at the function of hauling the load, but not as a being. I didn't change my form that way. And that's the point. So that can't be a true statement. But millions of people will believe it. And this is what you have to protect yourself for. So we're told lots of things. So-called authorities, their authorita will tell us lots of things. We can buy into all kinds of it. We can lose our minds over. U.S. warns public about attacks on energy industrial firms. Another story as they move the war of terror against us. Well, this told us that Israel and the NSA are hacking the world to blame everybody else. Who do you think's actually going to do this, folks? Really? The United States government issued a rare public warning, I told you be careful of these one-offs, rare public warning that sophisticated hackers, didn't we just hear Kaspersky, who is one of the people trying to protect you, said they were bested in a deep way. Rare public warning that sophisticated hackers are targeting energy and industrial firms, the latest sign that cyber attacks present an increasing threat to the power industry and other public infrastructure. Folks, we've been listening to this since 2001. You mean to tell me they haven't figured out ways to isolate themselves just a little bit? Just a little bit, folks. Here's your evidence that nothing's happening and it's all fabricated. The government itself is doing it. And I'm going to believe that until I'm shown that they can't. Why? Because they're the biggest threat. You think much as I respect you, Grimner, I don't think I'm worried about you hacking my stuff. The NSA or Israel, on the other hand, not so sure. Not so sure. And this is what my focus becomes. I'd rather take the position of someone who can harm me, will, and protect against it, not in a paranoid way, in a preparatory way, in an avoidance way maybe. Just don't stand in front of the bus and it won't hurt you. How about that one? That's a simple one. But here they're telling you now, it's come down, a rare public warning. Something's up, folks. I would expect something's going to happen. Actually, if it don't, it doesn't matter. I would expect something to happen, but I wouldn't actually believe that it was going to be some hackers that weren't Israel or the NSA, or their agents, or their mercenaries. But I can guarantee you it's probably going to be Putin that's going to be doing it to you. Oh, maybe even some new nemesis out there. Remember, they've been priming the cyber war pump for quite a long time. Telcos selling real-time ability to associate web browsing with a name and address. Not only do they... See, it's not bad enough that they can hack you just about every time they want. The telcos make money on top of that to sell your stuff anyway. See, big data rules. It's big bucks. They get you focused on this as well when you don't realize that Israel's going to be there hacking your system when they need to. And they may do it on a mass way in order to use your systems for misdirecting where an attack is coming from. Remember, that's a possibility too. Your system works fine, but they're using it and no one really realizes that. And then you get focused on doing an attack you didn't even know was going on. Oh, because you didn't put a password on your WPA protected router, you did it. You must have done it. Then you find out your WPA router is hackable too. Completely. Telcos selling real-time ability to associate web browsing with a name and an address. So, it kind of shows you better start doing some anonymity things if you can. The point is, there's dollars made on your plugging in and running around the internet, and it's one of those double-edged swords. Well, what can you do about it? But we need this tool. We need it as badly as the government does. Again, you would not know about me if it wasn't for this medium here. Yeah, the seance, this spelling that we do here, all this black magic. It's the system of the devil, I tell you. Mercury. Information. That's right. And here we are using it, trying to inform all the rest of the crabs, the crickets, the prairie dogs. They're here. They can hack your stuff, but it's not good enough for the government. Government may seize citizens' fingerprints to unlock Apple devices, federal court rules. I'm just wondering when the knife comes out and lops that finger off. They get to choose, too. You'll read this story. Federal court ruled the United States government is not violating a citizen's Fifth Amendment rights when they require a citizen to apply his or her fingerprints to a sensor so authorities can access a device. The government sought authorization to seize for residents, so their fingers could be applied to Apple devices in a home in order to uncover evidence related to a child pornography case. See, always the worst case they can come up with to get you to say, yeah, you should be able to lop that thumb off. Enough, I'll talk about this. The point is they're telling you all about this, the Internet of Things, big data system is the technocrats' paradise in heaven. And you can continue to engage it. I wish I was a lot younger and had a little more capacity in the computer thing. I got all kinds of ideas. I'd want to play games with these people. So first of all, it's telling you do not use your biometrics in order to protect your phone. Why you would be available to that anyway, I don't know. Any rate, I won't go deeper. I'll be talking outside of my expertise. There's lots of things I'd like to see done if I had the opportunity to pull it off, just to stick it in their face. But I'm coming to the end of my life at some time here. Not many decades left, I'm sure, if I'm that lucky, to even worry about it. But some of you, or those of you that have young ones, now this is the new world. This is the new normal that they have allowed to come on you that is not so nice. And it becomes the new normal. Crime becomes the new normal. Victimization becomes the new normal. The point is, if you don't have a phone, they can't do that, correct? If you don't have a fingerprint, they can't do that. Maybe if you don't have a finger, they can't do that. So now they're going to tell you got 10 different times they'll be able to mess with you, I suppose. And then you won't have any fingers to have to worry about it, would you? So, despite the constitutional things, the Bar Association has the final say in this open-air prison you live in. And until we get a handle on all that, this kind of thing will come down. These tools are going to be used against you. And as I said, the government's not good enough. They can just hack your stuff. They're going to get you. They're going to show you how they can dominate you. Notwithstanding, a story comes up that someone has analyzed how the CIA made Google insurge intelligence a medium for attacking you. Again, Google is, from the beginning, helped and fostered through their founders by the CIA. And this is a story talking about it. I couldn't even read the whole story, didn't have enough time. I read quite a bit of it. It talks about lots of connections. It talks about how they do it. It talks about what you're looking at. Again, you can do external research to find out the accuracy of what this author does, if you're interested. It only points out that they'll tell you all kinds of stories about how Russian did it, and they're the ones that have the capacity. They're the ones that set the whole thing up. Google, don't do evil. And they're the evil. Well, maybe just the concentrated evil. It's a little thing that affects the rest of it, remember. It's part of the Internet of Things they needed. It's all here to show us we're dupes to it if we're not really paying attention to try and figure out how to limit our liabilities to it and still function. In other words, be in it, but not of it. So they take on, these government takes both, on both ends. Like I've told you, they burn the candle, the Republican and Democratic parties, just different ends of the same candle. And America is that candle, and they're consuming, with their corruption, they're consuming America. That's you. And they do it because you allow the wax of your substance to be burnt by them. They get you from both ends. They get you from either they can hack you or they say out front, we're going to take it from you. And apparently the courts are okay with that. That shows you the foreignness of the courts. How is that rising up to the preamble they also got rid of by just saying, oh, it's just a preamble, doesn't mean anything, doesn't put any context at all on this document, that you could be living in happiness. How is that you'd be forced to do this under an allegation? If we find it, someone's say who we also find out is willing to lie just to maybe get a little more, another merit badge, maybe a little bit more retirement money. How sold we are as a people against ourselves, under the color of doing justice and helping the public and all these things. Corporations do the same thing. And again, as I say, you're dealing in a system that beats you at both ends, both sides. Whether you have to give it up or whether they take it from you. Whether they force you to a service that causes into another service that you are said to be obligated to have to follow. And then you complain. You don't go back and look at the actual origins of it, and then turn around and make a strategy on how you're going to combat that attack. And that attack is on us, your capacity. They don't call us human resources for nothing. They don't call you human capital for nothing. They derive their existence. These entities, these corporations who focus on whatever they're focused on for their good is not focused on your good, but what you can provide to them that they can extract from you. And I've talked to you about this problem. How, if you don't have your health, you probably got not much. You'll be focused on that instead of what you could be doing. You don't go far when you're not doing good, and when you're not feeling good. You're focused on that, and so you're not going to be a help to yourself or anyone else. In fact, one of the projects I had to take on was because someone had something befall them, can't be fixed really quickly, and there was no one else that could take on the project, that their health took them down from being able to fulfill. So it's very important to understand this other dynamic. The government takes it from both ends. They get it from the backside. They get it from the front side. They're going to get you. For all those that think that it's really intelligent to use the F word, you know where to put those words. I think that story was a load of garbage too, but a lot of people seem to embrace it. This is all the tales we tell ourselves because we're told, and we look to find some value in them, and they don't make any sense whatsoever, but we find value for ourselves. Because we're usually focused on ourselves, looking for some kind of encouragement to our value. And I'm finding that you just stride out on a purpose, and that kind of seems to go away. You just do your purpose. But you become the human resource. You become the thing that the system works from. All these things you hear, like in the news about Uranium 1, that's all what these legal entities, these corporations, these tools in legal are set up to use your needs. And we get another continuation. Wherever the government attaches has a force and effect, you will see this function. They'll get you coming or going. They'll get you. You're going to pay one way or the other. And then they'll have the ability to put you in places that you'll pay when you're forced to go because of where they put you the first time. It's like a billiard ball movement. That companies double dip by providing treatments for diseases caused by their products. Was an article that shows that wherever the government is attached, they're looking to extract from you the maximum amount of whatever they want to extract from you. Imagine being paid to be both part of the problem and part of the solution. It would be like having someone pay you to open a bottle of wine and pour it all over their white carpet, then they pay you to steam clean it too. Seems silly, but that's essentially what's going on with many modern-day pharmaceutical companies. Okay, this is something we've talked about before. This is not new. There's someone else now writing about it. Talk about this quite a bit for a while. Modern-day pharmaceutical companies, they provide and prescribe drugs that they're agreed to by the government, which cause side effects, which require you to go back to the pharmaceutical companies to fix the problem they caused. It's the revolving door of parasitic extraction. This is a mechanism you see, a method you see in about everything. People are paying for products that are making them sick. Then the same company that produced the product offers another product to treat problems they caused. Pharmaceutical companies are double dipping into consumers' pockets by treating diseases brought about by their own products. Then it goes on to mention Johnson & Johnson, talks about the problem with the ovarian cancer and the talc. We went through a little bit of that. I still haven't quite figured out how they made the connection. Somehow they have. The point is stated already. The companies, the pharmaceutical companies, they do things that cause side effects that you then have to pay for with your life, and then your life, your wealth, and then your activity. And they continue this. The government allows this to continue. The very first thing that you should see, or have heard here, it should have come to your mind, I hope a lot of you did. People are paying for products that are making them sick. Stop paying for those products. Stop getting the iPhone. Stop using your finger to undo a phone. Whatever. We'll go on and on. Stop doing those things that you are hearing in the news they're going to be able to compel you to do and cause you to do. What's the alternatives? That takes a little bit of research. In fact, last night we were talking a little bit in the chat. Someone has some problems. Sounds like the medication they were prescribed was causing adverse secondary reactions, which cause other problems. It seems to me obvious you need to stop the first thing that's causing the problem. But it's deeper than that, folks. You got to look at, as I eventually just said, I mean, you can't diagnose much of stuff. You just hope that you can offer something to help somebody. You have to go after the cause. You can't even deal with what the medicine's doing or the pharmaceutical's doing. You have to find out why you were given that, why the doctor thought he could give it to you to cause the side effects. But get beyond that. Don't go after the symptoms. That's a lot harder thing to find. Not impossible. It just takes a concerted effort. Would you be more willing to argue nothingness in the chat or start studying on the internet to find out how to make yourself more healthy so you can avoid the things they've set up for you? The silent weapons for quiet wars. The things they let you plug into. This is a choice we make. I mean, I can't even point to the doctors here. Can't even point to the system. If the choice is that you don't have to buy, then don't. If you are ignorant about why you have to go somewhere to go get that advice, maybe that's still on you. And I'm not saying that Western medicine doesn't have its, any practice, even the practice may not have some value. But you have to learn to discern in all of that as well. If you go and are prescribed or threatened to be prescribed a pharmaceutical and you haven't asked whoever's telling you to pull out the product's data sheet, a safety sheet, and look at it for its side effects and ask why are you going to try to solve this thing over here and then cause 10 more things, that I think is on you as well. So, another proof, I guess, that the story that most anything that the government touches is really the bottom line, on how to extract from you the best to their bottom line. And if they can prescribe to you something that causes a secondary thing that they can also fix, they'll absolutely be there to do so. If they want to do planned obsolescence, that's absolutely what you're going to get in your life. In fact, I think I heard someone talking about, I don't remember now where it was, it might have been, I don't remember. The Dork Table, I think it might have been. I think Grammy Mary was maybe mentioning things only last a few years now, and they used to last forever. Absolutely, because they can get you to do and keep buying the same thing you need to buy. That's a proven plan, and we continue to allow it. That used to be a big deal back in the 70s when it used to be the tools that you had were like something good from America, and all of a sudden the Japanese tools started to come in, and that was, or the Japanese motorcycle, anything Japanese at the time, it was just inferior, period. Now, you almost can't find quality anything. I'm not going to put that in an absolute, but it's very difficult to find anything that might last for a long, long, long time. I mean, I'm astonished that they can't make a 12-volt light bulb last longer than a few minutes. Since, in relative terms, of course, it lasts a couple months, but that's all. It used to last for like forever. But notwithstanding, we'll get lost in all that. So, this is the condition. If you're not aware that they're doing this, every government will do this to you now in this time, in this age. They will extract from you and cause you to be able to be extracted from. You're missing one of the main points. Again, getting back to the Bitcoin, if you don't think that system is set up in order to control your whole life around this thing they called a currency, your electrons are currents, right? Oh boy, the way they use this language is pretty cool, but you don't think that that's going to be used to control things and be used to come after you as well. See, if you use the wrong one, you're missing how they do it. These people that have the plan. And as I've said, their plan is our problem, and our problem is that we're crickets. Or maybe worse. And I did comment, I don't like to comment to Natural News, I just called him out about this. It's a little bit sensational for me. I did respond about his analysis of the audio forensics. I appreciated that. That is probably one of the main things I have seen. The gentleman, Mike Adams, I guess his name is. I don't know. At any rate, he did that. I thought that I appreciated that. It's what I was asking someone to do. I don't have the time to do that and more. I mean, we get deeper. He brought out another one that sounded a little bit sensational again, but I wanted to call your attention to how this is working on, if I would go to coordination and collaboration type things where you have stakeholders and you have these industries that are working inside the agencies to help advance their bottom lines. Here was another example of that shows you the extreme nature of the people that are actually making policies that you sit crickets to, and they get their way, where he reports medical terrorists at large. NMA panel suggests no American has the right to refuse experimental vaccines, and children must be held down by police while injected. Pretty sensational sound, part of which is very true, that there's people out there that believe that. It is an association. Their contribution is one of a comment and an influence. And as long as those are not countered, they are going to win the day. That's going to be the day in the future you're going to start seeing these kinds of things happen. They're already getting most people to be agreeable to them. I won't get into all the vaccine problem about this. There's minds out there that think that they have a higher calling to help more people than you do with your opinion of them not being able to. So this is the world you are living in if you're quiet. These lunatics are out there describing your future. This is how the whole thing has been working, and they did. So whoever came up with this plan really understood things. They really did. All I can do is, I don't like it, but I have to appreciate it. Doesn't mean I like it enough and I can't defeat it. I just have to deal with it. And so do you, but you don't maybe know that, or you do, and you'd rather go argue with everybody on every other thing. And I've been watching, actually I looked down a couple of times, in the RLM chat, one little line I get to, or one little space I get to see, talking about the current action. How long will the current action take? And what about speculating on that? I don't really know. It should go pretty quick. All injunctions go pretty quickly. Sorry to get that to you back quite a few minutes ago, but getting back to that discussion on the equitable actions and these answers, what we have before the courts, that the government comes back and says, yeah, you caught us doing the crime, so what? Now we're all turning to the court to say, okay, yeah, what are you going to do with that? They just admitted that they do the crime, so what? Are you going to go with that, or are you going to do justice? That's going to be a pretty obvious example record to make, I think. So that time should be coming pretty quickly. Within, notwithstanding, I don't know, everybody has their part, an action to take within a case. You have your give and takes of the procedures. There shouldn't be any new filings able to be done. There's one that they can try that might extend the time, but it's within a month's time. We're going to find out what the court will do on that. And that, to me, I just wait. I don't have a thought one way, or I hope they go by the law. I'm totally anticipating them to not go by the law, and we have a response about that. But see, the snowball for us gets bigger on them. They they start getting attached to the snowball we threw over the edge. Anybody who allows this becomes an accessory as this thing is laid out, and as the laws show it, they all become an accessory to whatever elements we have pled to show which crime they're committing. And we've got the elements for felonies, and we have the elements for treason, and we have then, if the courts go with that governmental body, we have a whole bunch of procedural ethics that goes on that we can start showing people. And we also have the judge themselves in the misprison of felony or misprison of treason. Those are the accessory crimes, not as principal, but as an accessory. They can move into principal depending on how they do what they do. So, I'm sorry I didn't get to that too quick, but for an interjection there, and this injection they want to give you, there's people out in the world that want to do you harm. You can deny it, but that's, again, this is the big joke about the behind the woodshed buckets of sand. You can carry your bucket of sand around, and you can stick your head in the Acme bucket of sand. That's not going to fix anything. You know that. So I would ask you all to reconsider doing that thing. We really have a thing to do. It's not that hard. It's not that much trouble. It's just a matter of just getting involved with it. So now, as we moving into the older tabs, as we have been here, with a little bit of sensationalism about the fact of the holding down and the injections, that's what these people believe. But if you read the story, and it's not quite to that level. My point is while you let people talk for you, this is the kind of people that make the decisions, so it pushes it way over into the lunacy side. We got to stop that. These people who are in these functions and in this closed circular loop, the sort of revolving door of the agency, special interest, association, influence and control, also rely on tests, and they call best sciences. I told you, what if best sciences was a fraud? What if the best science they can create is a fraud? And they go with that. When they didn't define what best science was actually, and you see how this thing really works out, then you see the door opens for this whole continuous problem. Well, it just turns out, as I wanted to point out to these people that use this best science and by their association influence, they rely on studies, and it just came out this week, over 30,000 published studies could be wrong due to contaminated cells. Now, they do say could here, but when you're dealing in science, once you find a problem with this material you're working with, I think that pretty well invalidates that study until those that have the problem come back and show it didn't affect the outcome. Researchers warn that large parts of biomedical science could be invalid due to a cascading history of flawed data in a systemic failure going back decades. And remember now, put your mind how much this would be when they're talking about utilizing certain cells in developing pharmaceuticals or whatever, their vaccines or whatever all that they're talking. A new investigation reveals, again, an investigation, let's look at someone who looked at studies, reveals that more than 30,000 published scientific studies could be compromised by their use of misidentified cell lines, owing to so-called immortal cells, contaminating other research cultures in the lab. And that just reminded me of hygiene. If they can't have it in a lab no more, that used to be the big thing in biology, or even chemistry. Hygiene in a lab is critical. They can't even, this stuff is so persistent, it's like they've lost their sense about it all. And how I tell you, the best way to stop a cold is your hygiene. Wash your hands, or keep some, you don't have to get obsessive about it, just don't stick your finger in your eye after you shake someone's hand or got sneezed on or something. Wipe your face. I mean, do something to protect yourself. Well, that's what the problem is. They're catching colds in the labs, they're not even protecting. The problem is as serious as it's simple. Researchers studying lung cancer published a new paper, only it turns out the tissue they were actually using in the lab were liver cells. Or what they thought were human cells were mice cells, or vice versa, or something else entirely. If you think that sounds bad, you're right, and it means the findings of each piece of affected research may be flawed and could even be completely unreliable. In my book, folks, if you found that you did a wrong thing, I think it invalidates it on its face. It's not science, it seems to me. Most scientists don't intentionally publish findings on the wrong cells, explains one of the researchers. You don't think, folks? They're supposed to make tests on all this. This is a fraud by omission that I don't think I would accept either. It's an honest mistake, he goes on to say. The more concerning problem is that the research data is potentially invalid and impossible to reproduce. In other words, 30,000 cases they found are impossible to reproduce, as accepted as best science that was used at some point to fulfill some corporations or some agencies of agreement that maybe something was working okay. And so you get this medication that even you think is supposed to be doing some fixing you in one area, and it isn't even working on that thing in your body, and you wonder why you got your cankles all fired up or something. Well, why do they all of a sudden start hurting? Your carbuncles are bad enough. But your cankles started throbbing when you take this medicine and something's not right. Well, maybe this is the reason. And so, the tale that tapes in front of us, we can keep listening to these experts say, or we can start really taking more concentrated effort on our own behalf and do things for ourselves and then for others, given that we all start pulling together in the right direction, stop fighting each other, stop mocking each other, or whatever the heck it is we end up doing. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said got you thinking and get you fired up, and choose a direction, folks. Just lay it out there and get it going. I think you'll be amazed at what you can do. Thank you, Grimner, for what you do at reallibertymedia.com and the broadcaster and the archives and all that. And then the freedomnetwork.com is a social network, a little small social network. You can get involved there. And Jules at ucy.tv. Thank you for what you do over there, the syndication. And don't forget, I'm over at BitChute. We have a small following there, real small. Everyone's small following, but a few numbers of views there. We have Minds.com, which is I thank you, Minds, for really supporting that account there. I appreciate that. And then over at Vince Easley does the YouTube setup where he does that, I don't do that. He gets the picture and all, and I get to move that over to BitChute. So thank you very much for doing it and passing around the podcast. I'll talk with you next week. Tech Diffs or Nature Willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like. Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.